Hello, welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob and Adam and Robbie coming together after the first week of training camp to talk through some Seahawks topics. We're going to talk a little bit towards the end about this right. There's going to be some jersey conversation, basically, is what I'm saying. We're going to talk about that at the end with these rivalries jerseys coming in. But we're going to stick to football for the time being and run through a number of different topics. If you want to get involved, then send us a super chat in and we will put it up on the screen and read it out. So get those sent in now. The first thing we're going to talk about is some really disappointing news in the last 24 hours. That is Kenny McIntosh's injury. He has torn an ACL. It is a real shame. It is probably going to mean that we don't see him this season. And you do wonder about what it means for his career at this point. Really after a decent season last year in some spot duty, you hope that he's going to come to the fore this year, maybe take another step, get into the competition for some reps. I thought it was a great fit in this offense. He's now going to miss the season. So you do fear for him a little bit in that regard. It does mean that Damian Martinez pick is probably more valuable than it was. It does leave a bit of a hole maybe on special teams in terms of return duties, because I think he could have been involved there. Robbie, what is your reaction to this Kenny McIntosh news? Because he was a player that we both really liked when he was at Georgia, and it's a shame we're not going to get to see him this year.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing him this season. But again, I don't know how much playing time he would have really gotten other than maybe a lot of the special team stuff. But I think he's severely going to be missed on the special team side of things. And I think that's a big blow to the team. It definitely makes the Martinez pick a lot more valuable for sure. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of how he steps up and plays. But yeah, super disappointing. Was bummed when I heard it. And we'll see what that means for his future.
It's never nice, Adam, to see a player get such a serious injury in training camp. But I just think that he is somebody who, when he was given opportunities last year, he kind of took them. And given how often Ken Walker is injured, I think it's fair to say at some point this season, the running back 2 is not going to be named Walker or Charbonnet. Somebody else is going to get some reps at some point. And I would have really liked to see Kenny McIntosh fighting for those opportunities, because I do think he's a really good fit in that sort of Shanahan-Kubiak system. But sadly, he's not going to get those opportunities now. And it's just really disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, and on a human level for a guy, if this happens to someone in their 6th, 7th year, that's obviously, rough going for them, but at least they've had a taste of it, experienced it, hopefully making enough of a living out of the game. But for a guy that's entering, the period of his career, which is going to be seminal in defining, I guess, how his career is going to go, on a human level, it's just an awful one to stomach. And we can talk about how it's going to affect or otherwise Seattle, but I think mainly you think for this, of the guy first and foremost with this, because it's just a bad one for a guy like that to take at this point of his career.
Yeah, it is. And I think the reason why I sort of say that he's a good fit in this system is you've kind of seen with Shanahan that they've taken the bigger backs. They've taken highly drafted players, and the day 2 picks at running back who've played well at colleges like LSU, and those players haven't worked out. It has often been those later round picks with non-ideal size that just get the scheme, that are clever, that that just can get that cut and explode and find the gaps and make big plays. And that's what Kenny McIntosh did at Georgia. And when he was given chance in Seattle, the few chances he got, he's shown that as well. And I think he could have been a really useful player to have around. And as Adam says there, you've got to feel for the player. I do think he's going to be mentally tough and come back from this, because that's the kind of player he's shown to be in his career so far. But it will be difficult for him next year, because you just don't know what's the depth. If Damian Martinez has a great year, it kind of blocks that path for him. If Ken Walker has a good year as well, maybe you re-sign him, then your running back position is kind of sorted there. So it's a real tough break for him. And we all wish him the very best on his return. Pivoting from that news, I want to go straight on to what I think is one of the better, bigger talking points at the moment, and that is Charles Cross's contract situation. So there was some news today that Rashawn Slater, the tackle for the Chargers, has signed a new contract, and he is now earning $28.5 million a year. He is the highest paid left tackle in the league, ahead of Tristan Wirfs, who's just behind him on 28.12. Penei Sewell's on 28 million. Trent Williams, 27.5. Christian Darrisaw, 26. When I saw this news earlier, I figured that the reaction would be, by and large, you have to get Charles Cross signed up now because he's only going to cost more at the end of the season. My argument and counter to that would be, if Charles Cross plays like he's done for the last 3 years, there is no way you are going to be paying Charles Cross $29 million a year. You're just not. He has not played at a level to warrant that. I have not studied Rashawn Slater's game at the Chargers to know whether he is somebody who's played at a different level, but I know that Tristan Wirfs has played exceptionally well for the Buccaneers. I know that Penei Sewell has played exceptionally well for the Lions. I know what Trent Williams is all about. Christian Darrisaw has done pretty well. I'm not necessarily someone who would have paid him $26 million a year. It is what it is. I just don't think Charles Cross is a near $30 million a year player based on what we have seen. And Robbie, I don't know what you feel about this. My position has not changed at all. If he comes into next year and plays brilliantly and it costs you even more money than it would today to re-sign Charles Cross, I'm not bothered. If it's $3, $4, $5 million a year more than it would be to do it now, but you have the reassurance that we've seen that he's got another level to him and he's going to reach that in 2025. If he becomes a lockdown left tackle, I'll happily pay him a bit more next year. Do you agree with that take? Or are you inclined to agree with other people who think, oh, just get him signed now. You know, he's good enough. You know, it doesn't have to be amazing. He just has to be somewhat competent. And that's worth tying him down for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I can see both sides of the coin on this one. Like, I can see where people think like you can probably get him cheaper now, lock him in for an extra 3-4 years. You know, he's good enough, right? But I tend to agree a little bit more on your side. I want to see him come in and dominate, and if it costs a little bit more, it does. We have a lot of cap space, so I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be detrimental to the team if he comes in and dominates. Again, I do worry about paying players after their final contract year. I worry about that. Like, if they haven't shown it for 3 to 4 years and then their contract year they come in and dominate, I worry about that only for the simple fact that it seems like when that happens, you've seen oftentimes that they take a step back again because they're playing in their contract year. They know what it's worth for them to kind of step it up. Not saying it happens all the time, but that does make me worried. But I mean, you know, you're gonna pay a left tackle a lot of money. So if he comes in and plays phenomenal, give him what he earns. I think you're right. Make him earn it.
And I just, for me, Adam, it all comes down to, I think Robbie makes a reasonable point there. It is a challenge to know when to pay a player. Now, Cross is not in a contract year. I think this is the thing that makes the difference for me. If Charles Cross was in a contract year and he was in an expiring deal at the end of this season, I would think you have to make a call. You have to make a decision now as to whether or not he is part of your long-term future or not. He's 2 years left on his contract. There is absolutely no
right. I forgot
rush.
that was my bad. For some reason, I was thinking he was in his contract year. You're right.
That's a thing that a lot of people, I think, are missing the point on that, Robbie. And that's not a no dig at anybody, and especially you. I think people are sort of saying, well, you have to do this now. He's got 2 years. And then if you can't agree terms with him after 2 years, you've got a franchise tag. So really, Charles Cross is locked down for the next 3 years in Seattle if you want him. You don't necessarily want to go down the franchise tag thing because that can create a bit of bad blood. You know, you want to show that to the team that if you perform, you will get rewarded. You'll be invested in. I think that's, for me, Adam, that is a topic for the next offseason when he's got a year left at the end of this season or towards the end of this season. If he's playing very, very well, you tie him up. What we have seen so far to me is not an elite left tackle. And I would just wait on this. Have you got any thoughts on this? Because I know there are a lot of people out there. They are convinced the Seahawks need to get Charles Cross done ASAP.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I think the last time we streamed, I don't know if it was just me or you, if Robbie was here as well, but you brought it up as a topic of conversation. And it kind of blindsided me because I just didn't even think it would be a talking point, given that you've got the 5th year option that was taken up. For me, that, you know, you use your 5th year option It's there to give you the chance to see someone in their fourth year, because you're clearly not entirely sure what you've got, or you're so sure that it becomes an all-time bargain to keep him. I don't think that's the situation that we're in with Charles Cross at all. And it maybe in a hypothetical world you would want to pay Charles Cross, but I feel left tackle and defensive end, understandably to a point, but those are two positions whereby the money these guys are making just does not seem commensurate with the increase that the salary cap is seeing year on year. Like when TJ Watt signed for, I know it's a headline figure, but $40 million a year, that really stopped me in my tracks. And looking at the contracts these left tackles are signed, look, I get that you pay what the market dictates, but I'm at the point where your left tackle would have to be exceptional to want to part with this money, because I just don't think that a general manager worth their salt, I feel like they should be able to use that money and their resources better than spending that on, not mediocrity, that'd be harsher on Cross, but good, decent to good. And, they always say the worst thing you can do is pay great money to good players. This is astronomical money. Like we're beyond great. Great would be $20 million as far, in my mind, 28, 29, 30. That's a hamstringing amount of money. So I'm really surprised it's become such a topic of conversation. I think people are sleepwalking to this idea that player gets X on Monday, therefore player Y must get more on Tuesday because they're next up. And I think people have just got really lazy with the way in which they approach some of these topics, particularly. I've seen it with Cross already. Cross will be delighted to see that. Well, why? That's ridiculous. That doesn't happen in any other walk of life, that someone gets paid something, so you're next one up, you get paid more. It just doesn't happen. And I think people need to just really cut that out of the discourse with NFL players, because it's absurd.
And I think people have maybe got caught up a little bit on his draft position. I think because he's a top 10 pick and it's a left tackle, part of the thinking is just that, well, he must be good. He's playing very well. And I guess if you were a quarterback throwing interceptions, it's easier to say whether they're playing well or not. If you are a receiver who drops the football, it's easy to make a point on as whether they're playing well or not. A left tackle, I mean, he has been beaten a reasonable amount of times for somebody that we're talking about here paying nearly $30 million a year potentially. And for whatever reason, that's not picked up. It almost feels a little bit when Charles Cross gives up a sack, everyone goes, that wasn't very good from Charles Cross. When anybody else on the offensive line gives up a sack, it's like, oh my God, that player is so bad. We need to get rid of him. He's terrible. But he has given up his fair share of pressures, of hurries. He was in the top 5 of the NFL for both of those last year, in true pass sets and in any other play. And he's graded well in some other areas. He has some qualities to his game. Clearly, his footwork is incredibly nimble for a man of his size. I've always had an issue with his frame. I do not think he has an orthodox frame for a left tackle. I don't think he finds it very easy to play inside out. What you really want to do is have somebody who's comfortable taking away that inside counter and then having the kick slide to get into position. And then once they get into position, they lock in and they win with strength. And the issue I've always had with Charles Cross is when he tries to play inside out, he lunges. He lunges off the edge. His footwork is good, but he lunges too much. It's a technique issue. And then when he does get into position, because he has got good feet and he gets his hands on people, he's often just not powerful enough. And he got overpowered at Mississippi State. It was something I highlighted coming into the draft, into the draft before he was taken by the Seahawks. And it's just something that hasn't really improved. Now, this is his 4th season. If he can come out this year, play inside out a little bit better, show that sort of strength so that when he gets into position, he can really sort of forcefully win there. If he can stop lunging off the edge, because he gets beat. For someone who's as athletic as he is, he gets beaten off the edge too much when pass rushers get to the arc first. If he can cut that out, I have no issue with paying him a huge contract if he becomes a lockdown left tackle. But until he gets to that position, you should not be paying a decent player a salary that is the top end of the left tackle market if he is decent. He has to be better than that. And I just wish we could just take a step back on him and appreciate he's not there yet. And until he gets there, he should not be getting an elite contract. Now, as it happens, it looks as if the Seahawks kind of agree with me on this one, because he was interviewed this week And this is what Charles Cross said. He said his agents have yet to begin negotiations with the organization. And when asked if he hopes to get an extension this year, he said, I want to be in Seattle for my career. That's something I always thought of and wanted for myself. Hopefully we can get something done and it'll go that way. Now, I think that's really positive for two reasons. One, there is no hint of dissatisfaction with the fact that no talks have happened there. He's both quoted saying there have not been any talks and that he's happy in Seattle and wants to end his career here. There are some players who'd be holding out or would be saying, I'm a bit upset that talks haven't started, or I want to start talking immediately. He's not said that. He said there's no talks and I'm happy. So that to me almost feels a little bit like he understands the situation might not be resolved till next year. And I think that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine to sort of wait till next year and see how this goes. I'm confident that he will take a step forward this year because I think we've got better coaching. He's going to play next to a more talented, athletic left guard. I think he will take a step forward. I hope he does. I hope we're talking about a massive extension next March. I don't care if it costs him a bit more. I don't care if if he proves to be one of the top tackles in the league next year. If he does that, I'm down with that, and I'm happy for him to sign that new contract. Robbie, the next player I want to talk about is Derek Hall. Derek Hall, now this is what the brilliant Brady Henderson wrote, that Hall has staked an early claim to make the most jaw-dropping play of training camp so far. In an 11-on-11 period on Friday, the third-year outside linebacker overpowered Josh Jones in a pass rush with a shove that lifted the 339-pound swing tackle into the air and onto his backside. Anytime a tackle ends up on his backside, I find it amusing. Sadly, we've seen that too often in Seattle over the years. As Hall barked at Jones, several defenders ran over to join him in celebration. Leonard Williams was among them, flexing his muscles in a nod to Hall's display of brute strength. Great wording there from Brady on that report. Really enjoyed that. That is really encouraging, Robbie, because Derek Hall, the Seahawks are crying out for somebody on this edge rush group to make some big plays, to take the next step forward. And I don't care who it is, Maffei or Hall, one of them has got to do it. That's encouraging, though, to hear that from Derek Hall.
Yeah, very encouraging. And I'm going to give Jen a little credit here because I was actually going to say the same thing. I think it has a lot to do with the DeMarcus Lawrence signing. It sounds like I was reading something, I believe it was today, where they have kind of like hit it off and they're kind of feeding off each other. And I love that. Anytime a player, especially on the defensive side, is going to step up like that, if Derek and Hall can take a huge step forward and become a game-wrecking defensive end, I'm hell yeah. Especially with Wosu's down, you got to wonder what's going to happen there. We need guys to step up on the line, and I just feel like I love hearing that. Again, I want to see it in the game, but I love hearing it and love seeing it right out of training camp.
It does seem as if Mike McDonald's got a bit of a soft spot for Derek Hall, that he sees a real role for him. He's talked about Boye Mafe maybe being a bit more of a third down specialist, maybe a bit of a pass rushing specialist there, but perhaps sees Hall as someone who can develop into that permanent role. Adam, the player that he reminded me of coming into the league, he's more athletic than this player, but it's just in terms of the body and the look of him, was James Harrison, the former Steelers edge rusher. And the thing I said when Hall was drafted by Seattle was it took Harrison quite a while to become James Harrison. So I just pulled his stats up now. In his first 3 seasons, James Harrison had 4 sacks. 4 total sacks. That's not 4 per year, 4 total sacks. And then in his 4th year, he had 8.5, and then it was 16, 10, 10.5, 9. It's around that period that he was winning Super Bowl MVPs and making crazy plays for the Steelers. So perhaps, Adam, this is just the time. Derek Hall's taken a bit of time. He's now got the right mentor, as Robbie says, in Lawrence. Maybe he's the guy this year who can become the player that Seattle desperately needs off the edge.
Yeah, and look, we need it, right? So we're getting to a point where, the era of the Russell Wilson trade is now sort of coming home to roost, because all of those players that were taken by trade or by draft, a decision has been made one way or another on most of them. And no one has really stepped up and taken the mantle of being like a player that you look at and say, God, we got that, maybe Devon Witherspoon notwithstanding, to say like, for that trade, we got this player, or in this era, we've picked up this player to take up the mantle of being the next star. And so, we need it, for the trajectory of the team. Whereas last year was, good, that hopefully shows some signs of improvement, that this year is going to take a step again and again, particularly on defense. You're desperate for a player like Hall or Maffei to come to the fore, because you've not had to invest a huge amount in them to get them in the first place. So I think it'd be fantastic. And, if you can have the trajectory of someone like a James Harrison, I mean, you take 60% of James Harrison probably and say, yeah, sign me up for that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think it's encouraging that there's been so much positivity about the defense in general, because if Lawrence is the guy, like Lawrence is older now, and people have kind of, myself included, when he was signed, I've kind of written off that he could have any kind of career renaissance here. But we have seen pass rushers. You just mentioned TJ Watt's got a ridiculous contract extension. We are seeing players in their 30s still be somewhat productive. If Lawrence can stay healthy, who's to say that he can't have a highly motivated, I'll show you Dallas Cowboys season, and he's the one who ends up being the main key pass rusher, complemented by Derek Hall. But they do need somebody off the edge who can do it. But Curtis Allen has written a nice piece for Seahawks Draft Blog, and he's posted his thoughts on training camp when he was there this weekend. And he said, this is what Curtis wrote: the defense looks fantastic. Several players made impact plays in scrimmage. Boya Maffei easily got around Charles Cross. That's something we were talking about earlier there. That has to stop. Boya Maffei easily got around Charles Cross and chased Darnold until he threw the ball away. Julian Love exploded through the line on a running play and blew it up for a loss. The offensive line was regularly overwhelmed. That's not perhaps what we want to hear. And if the quarterback did not have the ball out in 2.5 seconds, he was in trouble. I'm going to just move on from that last line there, Robbie, because that is obviously not great news to the offensive line, and I'm sure we'll talk about the O-line later on. But from a defensive point of view, Curtis is not the only one who's been saying the defense looks really sharp here. And I'm really excited to see what this defensive unit could be. I've said this on a few streams now, podcasty things. Mike McDonald took over the 28th ranked defense in Baltimore. They were 8th in year 2 and 1st in his final year before he came to Seattle. He inherited the 28th defense again in Seattle, but massive coincidence. I don't care what the ranking was for Seattle's defense last year. By the time that season finished, Seattle's defense was playing like a top 10 unit. They absolutely were. So I'm not saying that they're going to be the first best defense in the NFL, Robbie. I will not be surprised if everyone stays healthy. If the key players stay healthy, that they're not in the mix to be the top defense in the NFL this year.
Yeah, no, I'm really stoked about the defense. Just want to give the offense a little bit of love, though, just because I feel like, you hear this a lot, especially at the beginning of the season. The offensive side of the ball starts out a little slower, but we also have a whole new quarterback group, a lot of new receivers, new people on the offensive line. So they're going to have probably a lot more hiccups in the defense, it's going to have. And, we do have some new players on the defense, but for the most part, it's bringing a lot of the same guys back. And I just think, the offense is going to probably start a little sluggish. I would expect even in the preseason games, it's not going to look super pretty. That's just kind of the way it always goes. Starts out slow. But it is encouraging to hear that the defense is coming and swarming and getting after it. So I do like hearing that. And I agree. I think this is a time where we're probably going to see the defense be one of the top, 5 teams or top 5 units in NFL.
Am I getting carried away with that, Adam, by suggesting that? I just look at the defense and no, they haven't lost any key players. And they've added Lawrence. They've added Nick Emenwari, who I think in this system is quite an interesting player with Mike McDonald to see how he's going to use him. I think that, if anything, the depth at cornerback, it wasn't great last year. It might be a little bit better this year, just for more experience and Shaquille Griffin being perhaps an upgrade on Trey Brown, maybe. I think it's got a chance to be a really good defense. Maybe they still need that one extra difference-making edge rusher. But the way that Leonard Williams played makes me think, maybe he could be the difference maker on the defensive line. Maybe Byron Murphy can take a step next year, alongside Derek Hall. That maybe there are the ingredients there, Adam, for a top defense.
Well, I mean, they probably have to at some point, right? Because the reason that this regime is currently in place was focused around Mike McDonald's ability over the past 5 years to turn decent into good, good into great, incrementally across this year's in charge. So I think if we didn't see a top 10 defense this year, injuries notwithstanding, you never know who you might lose, God forbid, during the year. I think we'd be quite irked, but in January, if we didn't end up with a top 10 defense, I think, offensively, it's a bit of a crapshoot at this stage. We've all got our hopes that improvements will be made because of hires, and they invested quite a lot in the offseason. But I don't think there's a reason that I can think of now, other than injuries, that would make not having a good defense acceptable, to be honest.
What do they need, Robbie, on offense to complement this thing? Is it just a competent running game? Because if you to be really good in the NFL, I think if you're really good on either side of the ball, you just need complementary play from the other side, and that was part of the problem when the Seahawks became the fighting Russell Wilsons in the late teens, where it was basically you will live or die based on how well Russell Wilson plays. The defense was so bad at times that it wasn't complementary. And maybe if they had a complementary defense, that could have been a team that did a bit more when it got to the playoffs. And I just wonder a little bit now where you've got a good defense, could be really great defense. The offense just has to really hold up its end of the bargain, doesn't it? Which is to good in the red zone, good on third downs. Is it just as simple as if they can match those two areas, which, funnily enough, are the two most important and probably the hardest areas to execute? But if they can be even top 15, 15th, let's just say 15th in both of those categories, which is middle of the road, would that be enough with a great defense to have a season that could essentially win the NFC West?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've seen great defenses carry fairly bad offenses quite often, especially if the defense is giving the offense a lot of chances or, giving them good field position. I mean, it's hard to say. I think, yeah, a great running game is going to help, a little more balance. I mean, last year, Ryan Grubb clearly was out of his element with what he was doing, and a lot of his game planning didn't make sense. I think, the new coaching regime is going to help out a lot there. I think they're going to help the offensive line. Heard good things about, Kenneth Walker. And I think that's going to be, obviously he's a stud. We've all loved him since he was coming out of Michigan State. I think if he can stay healthy, I think that's where it's going to start, is that running game. And, hopefully Sam Darnold can continue what he was doing last year in Minnesota and keep going. I really have I think I should really high expectations for JSN as well. And some of the tight ends, I mean, getting rid of Noah Fant and kind of letting Barner and Arroyo come in and compete for the job. I'm excited about the offensive side. They haven't, like Adam said, they invested a lot this offseason on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to be interesting to see how they go, but I think you start with that running game, and that's where it's going to be key.
Have they got enough weapons, Adam? This is something that has kind of become a bit of a talking point amongst fans and on the podcast and stuff. I think they're okay with that. I think as long as the running game's better, and it can't be much worse, but as long as the running game's better, I actually think Smith and Jigba, Cup, and then if Arroyo can be what I think he could be, I think you've got sort of three good targets there. And then it's a case of, it'd be nice to sort of find somebody else who could, I'd call it maybe like the Paul Richardson role. Somebody who's not really sort of seen as a big threat. He wasn't in 2014, but he'd make the odd play, he'd score the odd touchdown. Maybe Marcus Valdes-Scantling can just be that. I think those pieces could be okay. And there's always a chance that a younger player emerges over the next few weeks, although it doesn't sound like anybody's jumped off the field so far to those watching. But have they got enough weapons, or do they need to go and ring Amari Cooper and go, how about it? Do they need to go and sign somebody else? What do you think?
I think they're short of like a burner on the outside, like big a DK Metcalf style player. Understandably, they got rid of DK Metcalf. I don't necessarily think this is the year that you want to go out and invest a huge amount in trying to find that person, because I think you're better off growing year on year, and maybe that's becomes your main focal point for the next off season, and show a bit of patience, as opposed to just like getting a Amari Cooper who's probably not going to help you that much more than just being a name. But that's my main concern, just having that outside proper threat. There's a lot of inside guys. There's a lot of obviously movement and quick routes that we could be very, very effective. But I wonder that it could have become a little bit predictable in that a lot of the guys want to do the same thing. One thing has struck me is that I think I've seen 3 interviews this week where a player has been asked, what do you think about the offense now? And a load of them have just laughed straight away and said, well, we're going to run the ball more. And I don't know. I was thinking, like, why did they not fire Ryan Grubb during the season last year? We don't. It's not such an important topic. It's well in the past. But I just wonder, like, if Mike McDonald wasn't a first-year head coach, would a change have been made? Because he would have been seen as a guy with enough authority to make a decision in season. Because it just feels like the guys are almost laughing at how poor the structure and game plan of the offense was. And I don't understand why they wouldn't have made a change unless it just felt easier just to not draw any focus on the decision in the first place.
It's a great question. I don't mind discussing it at all. I think you're right. With hindsight, they should have done it. And Jake Peets was in the staff. Maybe they had a chat with him and said, would you be willing to do it? And he said no, because he didn't even sound like he was a consideration for the job this time. And yet he's still with Seattle. He didn't go anywhere else. I don't think he even interviewed anywhere else. So he might have just be happy in the role that he's in and wants to do that and doesn't want the glare of being an offensive coordinator, doesn't want to get fired and then have to move his family or whatever. Maybe he just wants to do this job, have a bit of job security and carry on. But they had someone on the staff who could theoretically have done the job. And they probably should have just moved on from Ryan Grubb because it was an absolute disaster. And you do wonder a little bit when it became obvious to them that Grubb was not the guy. Could they have won an extra game somewhere? To get to the would it have mattered? I don't know. I mean, just to get to the playoffs and lose early on. I mean, if they'd have had a great run, then obviously it would have been beneficial to do that. But I don't know. Grubb was obviously not right, and perhaps, as you say, if this was sort of year 3, 4, 5 of McDonald and they'd just taken a chance and it wasn't working out, they probably would have done this. I suspect that probably it would have given a vibe of being dysfunctional to the outside world. But Adam, that's ultimately what you paid the big bucks for, isn't it? To make a ballsy decision, to show a pair and go out there and make a call. And they didn't do that last year. And you do just wonder, maybe, as soon as it became obvious he was not the guy, should they have moved on? Because that offense was a shambles last season. And as you say, it doesn't matter now, but maybe they should have done. What do you think, Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020. I think they should have. I think it would have been nice if we were all complaining about it, after week 3 or 4, like what the heck is going on here? What is all these motions and shifts and like looking over like they're in college and trying to figure out the play, and it just all was a mess. And he was just clearly out of his element. He needed to stay in college.
Had a super chat. I've got a couple more topics I want to get into before we get into the jersey talk. This from Corey says, my season prediction is 11-6 and a playoff win. They assert, I don't know what that means. The asset they have, a top 5 defense and a top 10 rushing attack. The explosives are going to be in the 10 to 15 yard in breaking routes, not the outside bombs we're used to. Thank you, Corey. Thank you for the super chat. Very generous, much appreciated. I agree with a lot of what he says there. I think that's the kind of win range they're probably going to be in. And I think if they do have a top 5 defense, Adam, and a top 10 rushing attack, they might win more than 11 games. They might win 12 games because that's a winning combination in the NFL. And I think in an NFC where you don't have Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and all of these great quarterbacks, a top 5 defense and a top 10 rushing attack can win you a lot of games and can get you, perhaps more importantly, quite far in the playoffs with that kind of combo.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot to start switching your expectations up from thinking, competitive to properly competing for, something serious. We've had it, I think, in Gino's first year, before the ill-fated Munich trip that seemed to sort of knacker the season. I think a lot of us were thinking, do you know what? Like, look around. There's not that much strength in the NFC. We look pretty good. And yeah, we all thought in the offseason we were going to be this, but now we're clearly not. So let's shift the expectations up. I think I imagine that anyone that makes a prediction for Seattle this year is going to have a floor of 9 wins and a ceiling of 12, which is not exactly the hottest of hot takes, and it wouldn't be exactly putting your neck out there. But I don't think it's unreasonable to think that after a few weeks of seeing how they play, that if you were a sort of a 9 and 8 kind of guy, that it might end up that you think, oh, do you know what? It's not the hardest of schedules. Some teams have not looking good. We seem pretty healthy, and maybe 12, 5, 13 and 4 does become more realistic. I think if of all of the leagues, this is the best one for that, and it really has the beauty of just feeling like you can. What you think going into the season can just be completely blown out of the water for a number of reasons, good or bad.
I want to come back to this, Robbie, just before we move on, because I'm just digging up the Eagles 2024 season on Wikipedia and having a look at how they started. Because, the Eagles have obviously got a lot of good players. They've got great weapons. They've got a quarterback who is now, as we know, capable of winning a Super Bowl. He's got the Eagles to 2 Super Bowls. You have to give Jalen Hurts some flowers for that. He's not a slouch. He's not a bad player. Defensively, they've got some very good players. Although they're not a complete defense. You don't look at the defense and go, wow, they're just so loaded. They have role players in a lot of different positions who do a good job for them. And the collection of players is very, very good. And again, on offense, they don't have a superstar head coach. They have a coach who's been a bit of a laughing stock at stretches in his career. Not anymore. He's just got a new contract now and is a Super Bowl winning head coach the rest of his life. But when you actually look at the Eagles, they lost to the Falcons at home in week 2 last year. The crappy old Falcons from last year. They lost to them at home in week 2. They scraped by the Saints by 3 points. They got hammered away at the Buccaneers. They were humiliated by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Florida, 33-16. And then they had a bye week, and then they came back and beat the lowly Browns by 4 points at home to get to 3-2. And Nick Sirianni was giving, as we say in England, the rods to the fans for beating the Browns at home. It just felt as if the wheels were falling off. There was talk that this guy could get fired at any minute. No one was looking at the Eagles and going, they are going to win the Super Bowl. And then as the season went on, look, they had some close...
Not just win it, by the way, romp it.
Destroy
go down as maybe one of the top 10 teams of the, whatever, romp it.
But this is still a team, by the way, that beat the Panthers at home by 6 points. They only just had a win against the Jaguars at home, 28 points to 23. I think they had to come from behind in that game. So they did have some very handsome wins, but they also had some kind of moments, and they almost lost to the Rams in the playoffs at home and stuff like that. So the point I'm making here, Robbie, is that our perception of the Eagles is, of course they were going to win the Super Bowl. Of course they were going to win the NFC. Saquon Barkley's unbelievable. He's unstoppable. Jalen Hurts is really good. Wow, Nick Sirianni calls a good game. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Carter. Oh, yeah, amazing. Early in the season, people were looking at the Eagles as just a bit of a mess. A talented mess. And yet, look how they finished up. I am not saying the Seahawks are going to go on that kind of a run, but it goes to show the NFC is wide open. And now the Eagles have to go and compete next year as the Super Bowl champion. And that can have an impact on teams. We've seen it so many times where they don't come roaring back and get to another Super Bowl. They can be a bit hit and miss. If that happens to them, who is the best team in the NFC? Who is the team in the NFC? If you sort of just take the Eagles out of it for a minute, who is the team in the NFC who you look at and go, wow, they're the guys? The Vikings won 14 games last year. There are opportunities in this conference, Robbie, to get hot, go on a run, and all of a sudden find yourselves in contention. And again, I am not trying to get carried away here. I am not predicting the Seahawks are going to be a 14-win team or the next Eagles, but this is a wide open division. And listen, I know people are saying in the comments, I want to bring you in. I will stop talking, I promise, in a second. People are saying the Commanders and the Lions, I completely take that on board. Could definitely see the Commanders taking another step. Their quarterback is extremely exciting. He looks like the real deal. The Commanders had a very good run last year. You've got to give credit to them. They beat the Lions in the playoffs. Fair play to them. Excellent, talented team. We'll see what they can do. The Lions, I just wonder if the Lions have missed the boat. Whether the Lions have had a couple of... They should have made the Super Bowl the season before last. They were the team to beat in the NFC last year. They couldn't get it done. They've lost... Most of their coaching staff has gone. They've got injuries, people coming back from injury. They've had retirements. Frank Rangnow's retired. I don't know if they've now, everyone respects the Lions now in a different way. I'm not sure they can keep going and keep going and keep going. So maybe the Commanders are, Robbie. Maybe they're the team. Is it possible, though, that the Seahawks could become a tough team? And if they do have a great defense and a good running game, that they could be one of those teams that everyone turns around halfway through the season and goes, bloody hell, they're better than we all expected. They're a contender in this wide open NFC.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up the Eagles and the Lions, actually. Did you guys watch Quarterback on Netflix?
I have not. I have not seen any of the stuff. I very rarely watch TV, Robert.
Okay,
so
if you get a chance, I highly recommend watching Quarterback on Netflix. So it follows. So it's funny because it was follow Kirk Cousins, and I remember thinking, wait, the Falcons beat the Eagles? I don't remember that, and like kind of went back and saw their schedule, and I was just like, insane. So, but yeah, I have it. First of all, I think you'll get a lot more respect for Joe Burrow as well. The guy's just funny and just like
I freaking love Joe Burrow.
But yeah,
I really like Joe Burrow.
Yeah, you should go. It's worth watching for sure. But yeah, and it follows the Lions, so it follows Jared Goff and such, and I think you're right. A lot of times, I'm forgetting his name. He just went to the Bears. Who was the coordinator for some reason?
Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson, thank you. Yeah, Ben Johnson. I mean, he and Jared Goff had like this connection, and they were talking a lot in that, and it just felt like, I think that's going to be a huge loss for them. But yeah, I think every year there's always an opportunity to go on a run, and if you compare it to the Eagles, who's to say that Kenneth Walker doesn't have an amazing season and stays healthy? I mean, we know what he can be. We saw what he did in college. He can be an absolute stud, and if the offensive line is blocking as well as they can, I don't see there's any reason why. And if the defense is playing phenomenal, there's a great opportunity for the Seahawks to make a run. Again, I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl. I would love to be super surprised by that and be celebrating next year around this time, for a Super Bowl win. But, there's always an opportunity. I think I say it every year. And we've talked about this too when we go like, well, do you want to make the playoffs or would you rather have a draft pick? We're going to lose anyways. I'm always the guy that's like, I would rather just get in just to see, because you see teams do it. It's happened multiple times. And same thing with I would rather have seen the Seahawks go in with the Marshawn Lynch beastquake run than have them lose the game prior and not make the playoffs. For me, that's just, there's always an opportunity.
I think the other thing is that sometimes with a team you expect to be a contender. I suppose that's where the Commanders fans will be next season. They will expect their team to be very good. They'll be getting the hopes up. Certainly when the Seahawks were in 2013, we as fans will have been going into that season thinking, come on, this could be the season. And especially when they won the Super Bowl, you expected them to carry on being great. And I don't think they're there yet with Seattle. And I think the reason for that is the unknown at quarterback. The fact that we don't really know what Sam Darnold... We need to see Sam Darnold play some games as the Seahawks quarterback to know whether they have enough at that position to be a serious team. And that remains to be seen. I think that's probably, Adam... I understand that the offensive line and stuff like that is going to be. I think if you get you do need a quarterback of at least Jalen Hurts' ability to, when you get to those close games, to be a difference maker. Now, Case Keenum went to the NFC Championship game, so you can still get the odd. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl against Tom Brady, so there are still opportunities where that non-elite quarterback can have success. But I do think that's probably going to be the difference between what could end up being a more fun regular season. I fully expect the Seahawks to have a better season than a lot of people are perhaps predicting is, particularly Vegas, who've got them at about 7 wins. I think they're going to have a really decent season, and I think they will win the NFC West. But I think the difference between a team that can then go and win, let's say, the NFC and get to the Super Bowl, I say that with a smile because it just feels slightly silly to be saying that. But if they're going to do that, Adam, I think they need Sam Darnold to be very, very effective, let's say, in this system. And Jimmy Garoppolo did it in Shanahan's offense. And Brock Purdy's done it in Shanahan's offense. So it's not impossible, but I think that's what they will need. They will need that kind of efficiency from him.
Yeah, I think he'll need to be as good as the Geno Smith lovers thought Geno Smith was. And I'm not trying to reopen that, pick at that scabble culture
Shaking
war.
the cage.
I know, yeah, come at me. But the pedestal that he was put on, rightly or wrongly, I think that's how good we need Donald to be to get to that level for sure. Because you get to a stage where your quarterback's going to win you games. And unfortunately, it got to that stage for Donald last year and it catastrophically did not happen. So hopefully for him, he'll be doubly motivated to get there. And, the coaching staff can put a system around him and players around him that can make that a reality because, you're not going to fumble your way to the levels we're talking about. Like Foles and Keenum won playoff games for them with like outstanding play. They weren't just passengers at that point. I think probably Peyton Manning at Denver's the last quarterback I can think of that was a proper playoff passenger that was winning games. So I think Darnold would have to step up and win games for Seattle in the playoffs if he can do it. If we're going to get there, and I don't know. I don't know what to think. I often players spook me when they do the sort of things that Donald did last year at the end, and I find that a hard reputation to shrug off. So, I'm going to struggle to give him the benefit of the doubt until I see him actually do it. That's probably harsh, and he may deserve more respect than that. But when I see players do that, I just really struggle.
I don't think it's harsh. I think it's completely understandable. I think that's where I am. I suspect that's where Robbie is as well. He's a player who has shown that he can play quite well for the Vikings and the Panthers when he played well there, and he did play well there. They had a winning 4-2 record for a really bad Panthers team when he was the quarterback there, playing with a running game and a defense. So that's the encouraging thing from my point of view, is that he's shown that he can be a facilitator within that kind of a system. But you have to see it. And he will probably need to not just have a good season, whatever anybody determines to be a good season, but he then probably needs to have a playoff game where he plays well and puts to bed what we saw last year when the Vikings blew the game against a difficult Lions team who were on fire at that point, but then just got smoked by the Rams, who, in fairness, were probably especially motivated by the fires that were going on in LA and everything that happened with that. Anyway, I do want to quickly talk about quarterbacks. Then there's a very quick O-line point, and then it's jerseys time. I think the Jalen Milroe stuff has to just chill out a little bit, because I'm a bit worried about this. I don't think anyone's doing anything wrong, but I get the sense there's an appetite to make Jalen Milroe a thing right now. And I just want to try and put ice on that. Brian put a tweet out, and I can't remember what he said, but it was a positive tweet about Jalen Milroe, and it got about 4,000 likes. And that was when I last looked. It's probably got about 8,000 now. And I got the sense that people were like, oh, okay, like this is it now. It's happening again. It's 2012 again. And I've looked at other things, and people are also talking about Milroe as, well, this is very exciting, and maybe he can get in the mix here, and maybe that. And what I really don't want to happen is I really want Jalen Milroe to have a great preseason, as to enjoy a preseason. I don't want Milroe to have an average preseason just to avoid all this. I want him to be great in preseason and be really encouraging. But what I don't want then is to, Robbie and I to be flying out to Seattle in week 1 and be sat watching the game and Sam Darnold's average, and have the guy sat behind us going, get Milroe in the game. Like, we can't be doing that every week at the start of the season. We have to be able to just go, let's just let Jalen Milroe have whatever his rookie season is going to be, and then let's just see what happens. Like, if the team's got like 2 wins by December and you want to give him a go, then fine. But even then, can we just give him the chance to get his feet under the table and give Darnold a proper chance. And then let's just sort of see where we are down the line, because he is a player who needs a lot of work. And we saw that at times at Alabama and at the Senior Bowl and even at the Combine when he was throwing in shorts to thin air. I don't really want to see this forced, Robbie. And I'm getting the sense that maybe there's like a building excitement for Milroe when he really just needs to be allowed to crack on.
I think it's that new shiny toy, right? You get something new and shiny and you're excited about it. You're unsure. It's untapped potential, right? It's there. You see it with him. The guy's an athletic freak. And you want him to be the next best thing. You want him to be the steal of the draft. You want in 3-4 years' time, people go, how the hell did we pass up him and let him fall all the way to the Seahawks? Like, you know what I mean? Like, people want that. I'm excited for it. I want that to happen, right? I want to be here in a few years' time going, we got one of the best players in the league. I get what you're saying. We should pump the brakes because he's not there yet. But I don't think there's anything wrong with rooting for him and wanting him to become that guy. But I also think like you're going to hear it no matter what. Sam Darnold will throw an interception and then Twitter will explode and people will be like, God, get him off the field. He's terrible. You're getting the same thing. And then, it's all the people who knew better way back get, he's probably going to be third string. They'll probably get him in for a couple plays, some trick plays or whatever, but you're going to hear it no matter what. And I think people will continue that path. It's just going to happen. You're just going to have to let that one ride, Rob. You're going to have to let it ride.
Robert, I would warn you now. I find it very hard to let it ride. I was walking out of a game, an English international football game, against Senegal a few weeks ago, and they were playing at Nottingham Forest ground. And as we were leaving, there was a fan next to me, and this won't mean a lot to a lot of people, but he was basically saying that it was the fans' fault for forcing out the old coach, who was called Gareth Southgate, and that we should all be thoroughly ashamed of ourselves for that. And I could not help but just intercept this guy's conversation. Go, I'm sorry, mate. I'm earwigging, but I'm going to jump in here and have my say. And we had a very polite conversation, and we both agreed that I was right in the end. I'm just joking, but I if somebody shouts something like "Get Milroe in the game now," and they're sat behind us, Robbie, I may be forced to maybe have to hold me back. Go, Rob, don't say anything, just ignore it. Just block it out. Just tell me a joke.
I'll just hand you a beer and it'll be fine.
Hand me anything. Just say no. don't say anything, because we both know it's going to happen. Adam, have you got this sense that the Milroe stuff? Have you seen any of this?
Yeah, obviously you can't really avoid it, but listen to someone like Hugh Millen, who, whatever you think about him as an analyst, I think when you listen to him talk about quarterbacks, there's a level of study and expertise he has that I think deserves an awful lot of respect. And his comments all week have been, he's seeing Friday plays and Sunday plays. So Friday being high school and Sunday being NFL, and not a lot in the middle. And there wasn't a lot of that when Russell Wilson was coming out, which is the natural comparison. I'm only comparing it because that's what people are saying, that, Sam Darnold is Matt Flynn, Jalen Milroe is Russell Wilson. And I think people are, just going a bit too hard too soon. I mean, I saw someone say, let Milroe steep. I was going to say, let Milroe simmer, would be my sort of let Russ cook moniker for him. Like, if you ever made like a pasta sauce or a stew, like you can eat it after an hour, but it's going to be much better if you wait and eat it after 5 hours. And it'll be even better if you have it the next day or the day after. And I think we're kind of at that level that, this just feels like the kind of thing that you could be allured into throwing this guy in because of what he can do without realizing or thinking about what the negatives could do to impact the long term. And I really struggle to see any way that he'd be starting games this season, to be honest.
I think if Sam Darnold is really bad, we'll probably see Drew Lock before Jalen Milroe. I don't even say probably. I think it's a certainty that that's what will happen. Very quick point on the O-line. I just want to get onto the jerseys. I don't think this is... I just read this. Michael Sean Dugar wrote about the O-line, and he said Christian Haynes has been taking snaps at center and is in the mix with the starter, but McDonald said that Jalen Sundell and Oluwatimi are ahead of him in that position battle. Haynes is also battling with Anthony Bradford for the starting job at right guard. Sundell and Oluwatimi have also taken snaps at right guard. McDonald and Kubiak are leaving no stone unturned in their search for the best possible 5 up fronts. So the only point I was going to make on this is I think if you've got 5 right guards, do you actually have none? I think that's part of the sort of the takeaway I had from that. It just seems I was kind of hoping that one person very quickly, and that could still happen, but I hope it happens in the next week, that somebody sort of says, I'm your right guard, and they just feel confident to go with that. I think leaving no stone unturned is still okay for the first few days of camp, but we really need to see somebody say, give me this job. That's my job. I'm the best right guard on this team. And it bothers me a little bit that Christian Haynes is taking snaps to center, because that to me suggests that they're kind of thinking, I'm not really sure about what he is here, and we'll have a look at him at right center. Maybe he can be a backup center for us. And Brian was saying that Jalen Sundell, I think it was Brian was saying that Jalen Sundell was like leading the way at right guard, and you're thinking, oh God, you've drafted him in the 3rd round and Bradford in the 4th round, and Jalen Sundell's going to be your right guard. Like, it's just a bit concerning for the future of Haynes and Bradford if that's going to be the case. But whatever. I just hope we get some clarity there moving forward. Right, jerseys. Robbie, I know, is keen to talk about the rivalry.
Listen, I'll give you a quick backstory. Rob messaged me and said, hey, let's do a pod. And I said, is this about the jerseys? I had no idea what we're talking about. That's all I said.
Right. So let me share the screen, because I was going to share the screen, but I'm trying to work out how you do it, because everything's, here we go. Because everything's changed on StreamYard. Okay.
Whilst you're doing that, Rob, I'll try and fill some in, maybe ask Robbie. But, if John Schneider signs or trades for someone in week 7 to play on defense for him, I'm going to give him the eternal benefit of the doubt that this guy's likely going to be great, because it's happened a number of times and it always has happened. And on the flip side of that, I already don't like hearing this idea that there are, positional battles on the offensive line. I was one that, and not everyone agreed, but I was one that wanted more activity and more work done in free agency on the offensive line. They didn't do it. But I'm in a position where I just refuse to give Schneider any benefit of the doubt when it comes to the offensive line. And I just wonder, how far into camp or into the season do you need to see something clear and effective that will kind of give you a bit more hope on it?
Week 2. Is that too early? I would like to see, even if they're struggling, I want to see some cohesiveness on the offensive line and let them kind of gel together instead of just moving people around a bunch. I hope during this time, that's when they're figuring that out, right? You hear about all people taking all these different positions and trying different spots, and hopefully they're just trying to find the best 5 guys to play in the right positions that they can gel together. Because you hear that a lot from offensive linemen. Hey, play next to the guy for 5 years, and I know what he's doing. He knows what I'm doing, and we feed off each other. I want that on the offensive line. So that would be my guess. Hopefully sooner than later.
Week 1 tends to be a real mess just across the NFL. There's always weird stuff happening in week 1. There's low scoring games, unclean football on all sides. But I think Robbie's right. By week 2, you want to see things settling down. The running game starting to show a few green shoots. And then I think by the halfway point in the season, you want to see consistency. Nobody should be expecting an elite line or no sacks or no pressure or no mistakes. But you just want to see a degree of consistency, I think, by halfway through the season. But I think quite quickly we need to see things settle down and a 5 picked who are going to move forward. Right, these rivalries, I have to say, I'm a bit worried about the direction the NFL is taking. In England, we used to have, so our football teams over here used to change their jerseys every 2 years. So unlike in the NFL, where the Packers are always going to wear their Packers home and road jerseys, their uniforms. Over here, you would change it all the time. People who follow Adam on Twitter will know that he's quite the reviewer of Tottenham Hotspur's latest shirt and has big opinions on that. But it changes. They went from changing it every 2 years to changing it every year to milk more money out of the fans. So the shirts become more and more expensive, and they change them every year, home and road, to get more money and fleece the fans. And that's become a real issue within English football. I don't think it gets talked enough about. And the NFL are never going to go down that road. They're never going to have teams change their jerseys or their uniforms every year. But I'm a bit worried that what they're going to start doing is just endless additional uniforms. So in Seattle, I think the expectation is they're going to have these fantastic throwback white uniforms coming out for the road games, which will look amazing. I think they should go to the throwbacks full time. But they're going to have that coming out. You've still got the throwbacks, which are very popular. You've still got the home and road that they're using currently. You're probably still going to have those stupid, what are they called? The lime green things, the neon green, whatever
like
they were.
Action green or whatever.
Action green.
Yeah.
The Colour Rush ones. You're probably still going to have them somewhere. And then they're going to shoehorn these rivalry uniforms in as well. And it's all money, 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 money. And does the NFL not have enough money at this point? They've ruined the playoffs. They've ruined the number of games in a season. Now it's how much more money can they get out of you? And this is the kind of big tease we've had all week. I don't know why they're waiting a month to announce these things, having teased them as much as they did. I mean, a whole month of this is going to be quite frustrating. But the Seahawks are going to wear these things. There's been a bit of speculation that the Seahawks ones are going to be somebody had reported the Seahawks their rivalry uniform is going to be quite out there. That they've been experimenting with like chrome things and what is it called? Where the Falcons have had a jersey where it goes black, but then it goes a gradient, isn't it? It goes into red. That they've been experimenting with that. I think those jerseys always look horrendous. The gradient ones. They had them in English football for a while. In fact, Spurs had an awful one. Didn't they wear that for the Champions League final, Adam?
Yeah, with shorts that didn't fit the gradient color because we always wear different shorts in Europe. Like it would have been unbecoming to win a trophy wearing that kit because it was so bad. It was the classy touch. It was the classy touch not to win that final because of the kit we would have won it in, to be honest.
Love it. But anyway, there's talk that the Seahawks might have some of that. I'm gonna guess, based on everything that they have shown, that these things are going to be green because you've got sort of a black silhouette there with a green outline, and then you've got the three teams in the NFC West in green. And if people have noticed when they've teased these things, the Seahawks logo has been all green. So I think they're going to be green, Robbie. I'm going to guess it's going to be black and green. That's what this is. What we're seeing here with this is essentially a tease for what these things are going to be. The Seahawks they can't bring out a fully green uniform because that will just be like the Colour Rush one, the lime green anyway. And they need something that's going to be different to the throwbacks and something that's going to be different to the home. They don't have a black jersey combo. Those tend to be quite popular in college football. I think this is going to be black with some kind of green stuff on it. If that is true, what do you think about that?
I think I'd be okay with the black. I don't know if I think there will be green accents. I don't think it's going to be overpowering like the action green. I think they've kind of learned their lesson on that. I do think there will be some green accents. I think could be like, I don't know. I've seen a couple different like mock-ups, and I like what people are doing in these fake mock-up ones, but I don't think it's going to be outrageously ridiculous. I don't think it's going to be like all green, kind of like what you're saying. But I don't mind black. I think it'd be kind of fun. It's different. I don't know.
If someone is a good graphic designer or something, do me a mock-up and send me on Twitter of a black uniform with some green gradienty stuff on it and be creative. Adam, do you give a toss about any of this? And if so, what are your thoughts on a black and green uni?
I actually really dislike when teams piss about with what they wear. I'm a bit of a traditionalist that the jersey you wear is the main calling card for what your team is supposed to be about. And particularly when you throw colors like black in that have nothing to do with Seattle. It doesn't do it for me. I mean, these jerseys look like they're going to rhyme with absolute white, as we would say, or absolute wit over there, to be honest.
Yes, I'm with you on the tradition. I really like traditional stuff. And I think so over here, again, to bring it back to England, whenever one of the teams over here brings out a classic old school, that just sort of fits the identity of the team. Fans always love it. They always lap it up. They always praise the team. They always go and buy them. And then it's almost as if once you've done that, then you've got to be really silly for about 5 or 6, 7, 8 years before you can go back to the traditional. And I always thought if I suddenly stumbled across like £5 billion and bought a football team, the one thing I would do is go to the NFL version and say, this is the home, this is the road, and we're never changing that. And that's my gift to you as fans, that you are never going to have to buy a crap, modernized. We may bring out a third shirt once a year just to get a bit of revenue in or whatever, but ultimately we're going to have a home and you're never ever going to need to worry about it. And from Seattle's point of view, I would just love them to go back to. I think the throwbacks look fantastic. I think when you see those throwbacks at home, they look like one of the best uniforms in the NFL. I think when you add the road, they're clearly going to bring in at some point for the 50th anniversary. They're going to look amazing as well. I just think that to me would be a great identity moving forward. But we're going to get these, and I think they're going to, like I said, they come out the 28th of August. That's like a month tomorrow, and then they're not going to wear them till the end of the season. So we can all look forward to that. Anyway, on that note, big thank you to Adam and Robbie. Adam, have you got something you want to say? You want to jump in?
I think we had another super chat come in.
Oh, apologies, I missed it. Dogzilla says, is there no competition at left guard? Well, I certainly hope not, because they spent the 18th overall pick on that guy. So, but I've not. Robbie, have you heard anything of a competition? Adam?
I haven't, no.
No, I heard nothing. But what I have heard was Gray Zabel being interviewed on KJR last week, Tuesday or Wednesday from camp. And he just sounded like a guy that knew what he was doing. And there was a confidence and an aura about the way he spoke, even as a rookie, that you could tell the hosts were pretty captivated by what they were listening to. And I would urge you to go back and listen to that. It was on KJR on the Softy Show, maybe Wednesday, first hour on listen to the podcast. It was great. And he just came across as a guy that knew how to riff with people. He was an adult in the room, and it was just great. I loved it. It gave me a lot of confidence, which is ridiculous, really, because it should make no difference whatsoever. But you could see why he would have been an alluring person to pick. He was great.
Yeah, he's the kind of player that I think they've needed for a long time. Athletic, strong, tape looks good, just a plug and play guy. And I've not heard anything about a competition at left guard, and would not expect that. I mean, they spent the top 20 pick on the left guard. Like, you want to see that guy playing at left guard, so he will undoubtedly get all of the reps there and get an opportunity to nail that. Anyway, I was going to say, big thank you to Adam, to Robbie as well, for joining us for this stream. A quick message that you may have noticed, I'm doing this new stream every week called the Seahawks Collective. That is going to be with Annabelle Hasselbeck, with Brian from Hawk Blogger, and Michael Sean Dugard from The Athletic. We did our first show last Tuesday, and it is every Tuesday. I'm trying to remember what the time is in America, because it's 5 p.m. Pacific time that we will do the live stream, and that's about 1 a.m. over here. So if you could do me a massive favor, and one, watch that, because it's 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the morning my time, and two, it's not on my channel, it's not on Brian's channel, it's not on Michael Sean Dugard's channel. It's a different, separate channel. So if you subscribe to this one, do us a favor and search for Seahawks Collective and subscribe. And that means that you will not miss any of those episodes. Like I say, every Tuesday, we're going to be having that conversation. Camps is here now. Curtis is attended. He's got a great write-up on there right now. Go and check that up on SeahawksTravelblog.com. I have been so busy with day job stuff that I have not had a chance to do any scouting yet. That is on my list of things to do when things have calmed down, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So I will be getting into that. I've got a bunch of list of players that I want to watch. I have watched a couple already that I remember from last season that I really like. So I'll probably wait till this college football season starts to review them. But that will get going. And obviously we'll be doing our streams and doing all of the stuff that comes along with the season being back. So can't wait for that. It's getting there. We're almost back to football season. And basically what I'm saying is check out SeahawksDraftBlog.com and subscribe if you haven't. Like the video if you haven't, and leave a comment as well. Many thanks to all of you. Great watching numbers, given we haven't done one of these in a while. Big thank you for the super chats. Massive thank you to Adam and to Robbie. Until next time, bye for now.